So welcome to this exciting video on Booleans and comparisons. In this video we're going to explain what a Boolean is and how to use it. I'll explain that you need to use equals equals for comparisons in C++, like many other languages. And for a logical and. You need to use two of those vertical pipes for a logical or. And if you want to access part of a string, then you're going to use square brackets and then the number of the characters starting at 0. You'll see all this in context in a moment. And finally, for characters, you need to use single quotes, not double quotes. Characters in single quotes, double quotes are for strings. So you'll see all that to come together as we progress through the video. So let's take a look at our application. What do we need to do next? Well, shortly we're going to want to make sure that we can play the game multiple times. I know it's not really a game yet, but we're doing a kind of top-down design here. We are making sure that the general flow is right, then going in and successively fleshing out the details. So if we were to play another time, we would want to ask the player if they can play again, or if they want to play again. So how would you do that? Well, you can put a comment in here, that's fine, or we can even directly just say ask to play again. So you just put a method in. Now that method doesn't exist, of course, we get a warning. So what can we do? Well, we can come to the top and we can declare the method. Of course, we're going to need to say what comes back. Now let's think about what comes back from ask to play again. Should nothing come back, or could we do something more useful with this method? Could we ask them to play again and then return whether or not they want to play again? That could be handy, because later on we're going to be going around these introduction game, play again, introduction game, ask to play again many times. It'd be very useful to be able to control that looping, as we call it, dependent on what they respond here with. So let's return something called a bool, which is a Boolean. It's true or false. Now that is represented as 0 for false and 1 for true under the hood, but we really want to pretty much forget that, actually. It's much better to think of it in terms of true and false, logically true and false, and not to mess around with ones and zeros trying to represent true and false. It'll just get us in trouble. So just remember that. Now, a little more on the topic of naming. I know we seem to be spending a lot of time thinking about naming, but actually there's a famous quote that all problems in computer science are, or the hardest problems in computer science are naming and cache validation or cache coherency. So naming is really, really important, all right? So in Unreal's coding standards, they quite sensibly say that all functions that return a bool should ask a true-false question, such as is visible or should clear buffer. We can do that here. We could call it wants to play again, but we would be hiding the side effect of the method then. The more important thing right now is that this thing is actually asking, and it's asking something on the console. And I don't want to hide that side effect behind something like wants to play again, question mark, because it's not clear that you're actually printing out to the console. So we're going to leave it like this. We're going to allow ourselves to flex a bit. We don't have to totally adhere to their standard because we're not writing code that is going to be integrated into the Unreal Engine, or at least not yet. All right, and later on when we introduce something called enumerations, we can actually solve this potential paradox, but one step at a time. So I've wishfully written it here. I've come up to the top and declared it. Now I can actually right-click, quick actions, and create definition. It says declaration stroke definition. It's because it's a multi-purpose line in there, but you're creating the definition. And it does this weird pop-in thing, and it's actually just showing us what it's put at the bottom of the code. All right, so we can close that. So looking at the bottom, it's actually written the method for us, which is pretty cool. Now look, it has written it in a code format that we're not going for. It hasn't put the new line, the brace on a new line. So why don't we start getting it to do that? Let me show you where you control it. Tools, options. You could just type brace, for example, or you could scroll down to text editor, C++ formatting, and then new lines. Here you go. And then we're going to look for the one for position of open braces for functions there on a new line. So into the options, C++, formatting, new lines, position of open braces, functions, new lines. Let's just test that works. I'm going to delete what it created, go back to the top, and then let it complain that ask to play again doesn't exist. Come on. If it doesn't, then you might need to just try recompiling. There you go. So there you go. Now right-click, quick actions, create definition of it, and then scroll to the bottom and see that it has actually now started doing things in our code format. That's good. So again, take control of the tool. Tell it what you want. That's under tools and options. Great. So we have this ask to play again method. Let's start writing it. See out. Do you want to play again, right? Question mark. Now we're going to need something to store our input in. So I'm going to say string response equals nothing. Always initialize your variables. Now let's go get this input. Now remember we used getLine before. From the cin stream, we're going to put it into response. Great news. Okay. And now I want to be looking just at the first character of this. So how are we going to do that? Well, to get to the first character, it's response, open square brackets, 0, because computers start counting at 0. So response 0 is the first character of response. Let's prove that to ourselves by just going cout, first character, first char for short, and then like so. Okay, let's have a go. Make sure all of this code so far has worked. So we put some guesses in. Do you want to play again? DSDF, first character D. Great. Okay, so that's working. Now what we want to do is think about checking whether this first character is Y for yes. So how do we do that? Well, let's try, is it Y question mark? And I'm going to put an end line here, by the way, just because it's really hard to see without that space. All right, great. So is it Y? And what you can actually output is the idea that response equal means equals. It's the comparison operator. Y. Now you need to use single quotes for Y because Y is a character. And if you don't, you're going to get an error. And you also need to put all of this in brackets so that it knows so that this operator here knows to read everything to the right, not just this response bit, okay? So we need to put all of this in brackets there. So we're saying the lump, the thing that we want to output, is this lot. So we put it in brackets, and this operator knows what to operate on. We could also try the problem of using double quotes. Let's see what happens here. You get another different type of error about operand types being incompatible, char and const, char star. Don't worry about what that means. Just when you're comparing to characters, use single quotes. And why is it a character? We turned it into a character by looking at just one element of the response string. So, is it yes? Let's take a look and see what happens here. Just let you digest this code for a second before I hit run. Make sure you understand it. Okay, let's take a look. So we put some guesses in and then we type yes, like that. And is it yes? 1. Remember I said they represent true as 1. Now we want to forget that, but you do need to, for this instance, understand that cout is just, instead of saying true, which I'd prefer it did, it's saying 1. All right, so that's how you get a Boolean out. The actual result of this is a Boolean, that thing in brackets there. So I've got a challenge for you just to finish this method off. What I want you to do is write the rest of ask to play again. I want you to allow for both Y and big Y as the first letter. Remember I told you about the OR operator at the beginning of the section here, this double pipe at the bottom of the screen. See if you can work out how to use that. And then I want you to ignore the rest of the letters in the word, as we started doing, and then return true for yes and false for no. Now, there's a little star here. True for yes and false for no is on the limit of what's obvious. So true for yes, false for no is fine, but true for red car, false for green car, no. Never do that. Okay, pause the video, and I'll see you in a second. Okie dokie, let's crack on and get this finished. So what we're actually just doing here is we're returning, of course, instead of returning false, which I've done by default here, or when it wrote the method for us, it nicely returned something by default. I'm actually going to return this. I'm going to say return response equals yes, or response 0, or we could make ourselves a temporary variable of type character called first character or something, equals Y.
Hi there, Sam here with a quick edit to highlight a question that is frequently asked here. The frequently asked question is, why can't I do response equals Y lowercase or Y uppercase? Why do I have to do response equals Y or response equals Y? It seemed a little bit repetitive. Well, the reason is that the logical OR operator, that double line, requires Booleans on both sides of it. Now, obviously the Y is not a Boolean. It's not a yes-no answer. It is a character. So what we need to do is we need to use an expression that will return the Boolean such as response equals Y, and we need to do that on both sides. Basically, it doesn't have an awareness of the context that we're asking it to set equality to response, so we have to be explicit. We often have this with computers. We have to be very explicit with them and their instructions.
So we'll only return yes if the first character is Y or Y. Let's go ahead and test it. Y, and it doesn't matter what we put there. Press any key to continue. Now, of course, we don't know what we returned, so you could come up here and get that value and print it in the main loop. Where is it? Here. We could just see out the result of the ask to play again method. So when ask to play again finishes, it leaves something sitting here, and you could always output that. Let's just try it. YES. 1, you see, so it says yes. Okay, let's just try putting something else. Like, I don't know, starting with K, 0. And we're pretty confident that it's going to work for the lowercase y because we did that before. All right, so that's it. What we've done is we've written a method called ask to play again that is returning a Boolean. I'm going to get rid of this C out because it's horrible. We don't have to use that return value. In this instance, it's running and we're not using it, but it's there, ready and waiting for us. So what we're going to do next is to start to wrap all this up into a loop so that we can go around doing this multiple times and stop doing this when ask to play again comes out as false. So congratulations on getting this far. You're doing great. And shortly, by the way, we're going to be taking a step back. I'm going to do a talking head and we're going to talk about the design of the whole thing. And it's going to start to get much more exciting, even more exciting than it already is. I'll see you soon.